Yeah, well, my degree was in journalism, and I worked on the college newspaper while I was there, writing about a wide variety of subjects. I got my first job at a newspaper. Well, I had an internship first with the largest newspaper in Ohio, the state where I lived. And then right out of college, I got a job at a smaller newspaper, which is where you usually start when you're a beginning reporter. And one of my first beats was covering police beat and county sheriff. So every morning I had to get up very early, go to the police station and the sheriff's station and look at the overnight reports of crimes and anything worth writing about. I have to go back to the office and write up an article about it, story. So that got me into crime reporting. And I covered a lot of subjects as a newspaper reporter, then eventually got a job at a magazine in Cleveland, Ohio, writing long form feature articles about things. And that was when I got introduced to computers. Well, actually, earlier at the newspaper, they had replaced our typewriter with word processors at one point. That's the first time I ever touched a computer. We never had computers in college when I was there. So I got interested in computers. I wanted to buy a word processor. And I ended up buying an Atari 800 in 1981, and mainly for use as a word processor. And it came with a basic language cartridge and an instruction book. And that's how I taught myself to learn how to program. And then eventually one of my friends at Cleveland Magazine said, well, you're interested in computers and everything. Why don't you get a job at a computer magazine? And so I looked around, and North Carolina had a computer magazine, Compute magazine it was called. And it was attractive to me because in Cleveland we had terrible winters. I got frostbite one winter on my toes. And so moving to a warmer climate was desirable. So that's how I ended up at Compute magazine. Hello. My name is Tom Halfhill. I live in Silicon Valley area of California. And to my surprise, I have been credited with inventing the world's first photography video game called Nessie, which I wrote back in the 1980s.
It's surprising, but it's true. Tom Halfhill is the creator of the world's first photography game. It's even on Wikipedia. Now, this might not seem relevant to what we're talking about today, but it is. Let's hear from Tom about how his game, Nessie, came to be, what it is, and why it was.
In the 1980s, actually starting in 1982, I went to work for a home computer magazine in the US, in North Carolina, called Compute magazine. And we eventually launched a bunch of other computer magazines and books. These were in the early days of home computing. And my background, by the way, is in journalism. That's my college degree. I started my career as a newspaper reporter, covering all the usual stuff, murders and everything. And got interested in computers and eventually decided to work for a computer magazine to get in on the ground floor of the computer revolution, so to speak. So I was working as an editor at Compute magazine, and that was I started there in 1982, and I worked there for most of the 1980s. And how the game came about was we published a lot of program listings in those days for games in our magazines. These were program listings for your younger listeners. You would type in the program, it'd be listed in the magazine, you'd type it in to your computer, and then you'd run it, and you'd have a program, a game or whatever. So we published a lot of games in our magazines and books. But how Nessie came about was, it wasn't really planned. I had a friend who had a young child, and he complained that too many video games were violent. He said, people are always shooting and killing things. I'd like to see more non-violent video games. So I thought about it for a while, and I thought these first-person shooter games always have like a crosshair on the screen that represents the gun sight. You aim at something, you push the fire button on the joystick, and it shoots and kills something. So I had this idea, if I draw a rectangular frame around that crosshair, I can call it a camera viewfinder instead of a gun sight. And this ties into one of my hobbies of photography. So I got this idea of drawing a rectangle around the crosshair to make a viewfinder, and then if you hit the joystick button, it takes a picture of whatever's in that frame. So then my next thought was, well, what would you want to take a picture of in a video game? Um, and since I was a boy, I had this obsession with the Loch Ness Monster. And I always read everything I could get my hands on about the Loch Ness Monster. And there was always this big debate about there weren't any good, clear pictures of it. And there were pictures that were passed off as real, but maybe were fake, and who knows what. So I got this idea, maybe the video game is to take a picture of the Loch Ness Monster, a clear picture that would prove its existence, just for fun in the game. So that's how the game came about. And Nessie, as you probably know, is the nickname for the Loch Ness Monster. So that was the genesis of the game. I was not setting out to say, I'm going to invent the world's first photography video game. It never occurred to me that it was. I just was trying to make a nonviolent game for children. So that's how it started.
What did your friend's kid think of Nessie?
I guess the kid liked it. I didn't really, I never even met the child that I can remember. Once I got started on the game, it had a photography theme. I tried to make it as much like photography as possible. So on the screen, it's like blue, representing the blue water. You have the viewfinder frame that you move with the joystick. The joystick button, when you hit it, clicks a picture and the screen flashes. And this is back, of course, before digital cameras. So at the top of the screen, I have some lettering that shows how much film you have left in your camera. You have a 20-shot roll of film in your camera, and the counter on the top of the screen counts down from 20 to 0. And then when it gets down to 0, the screen goes black, and this is supposed to represent you're going into the darkroom now to develop the film. And then gradually the 20 pictures you shot come fading up into view out of the black, just like in a darkroom when you put a sheet of print paper in a tray of developer, the image gradually fades up. And the black screen in the middle time, which was about 20 seconds, was kind of a convenience for me because it took a while for my program to do the processing. So I just pretended like that was you're in the darkroom when the screen goes black. But that's how it happens. And then the pictures you get on the screen, you get a score based on your pictures you took. If you got a clear picture of Nessie, that's when the crosshair was on the Nessie, you get the most points. If the frame was moving when you shot the picture, you get a blurred picture. And I also had the screen filled with other kind of fish and eels and things that fool you. So if you got a picture of the wrong kind of sea creature, then you only get a few points. My reasoning was you could always sell the pictures to National Geographic magazine or something. So, so that's how the scoring was based. And then I carried the photography theme even further. The Atari had some option select buttons on the side. I made it so you could put two different lenses on the camera. So the default lens was a big rectangle on the screen, wide angle lens, so it's easier to take a picture of something. And then if you push the button, you could switch to a telephoto lens, which shrank that viewfinder frame down very small. So it was a lot harder to get it centered on a moving object. So I had two different lenses you could use. So I tried to carry that photography theme throughout the whole writing of the game. I wrote the program in the BASIC programming language. For your younger viewers, BASIC is a language that came with the home computer, and it's kind of a slow language, and it couldn't move the viewfinder fast enough. So I had to write that routine in machine language. People today call it assembly language. And this was very difficult. I don't want to get too deep in the technology here, but back in those days, there were no LCD screens. Everything was a video tube CRT screen. And those type of screens draw the picture on the screen by scanning from the upper left-hand corner down to the lower right-hand corner. It scans lines horizontally across the screen. When it gets to the bottom, the electron gun in the tube shuts off for just a split second, returns back up to the left-hand corner, and then draws the next frame on the screen. Well, my animation happens in that brief period between moving the electron gun from the lower right-hand corner to the upper left-hand corner. There's just a very split second of time, and you have to write the program in machine language to get it fast enough to fit in there. You have a very limited number of clock cycles to fit it in there. And it's called a vertical blank interrupt technique. I did not invent the technique, but I used it in this program to animate the frame on the screen. That's how it moves kind of smoothly. And then the other characters on the screen, the Nessie and the fish and so forth, they're actually just characters, alphabetic characters that I redefined to look like creatures. The Atari had that capability. You can redefine a character set to make a different font. So I just redefined it to make it look like creatures, fish and Nessie. So that's how I programmed the game. It took me a while. It wasn't easy.
Photography games are now They're a fundamental part of the sort of gaming landscape. They are an established genre now. They take many different forms and operate in many different genres. Why do you think people like photography games? What do you think they provide to the player?
Well, I haven't kept up with them as much as you have, but I think the general attraction would be, for one, the first thing that inspired me to write the game, which is that they tend to be nonviolent. You're taking a
Hmm.
picture of something, you're not shooting and killing something. And also photography just in general has wide appeal with people. Um, Now with smartphones or regular cameras, people just like taking pictures. Um, and I just think it's a way of recording maybe what you're doing in the game. Like I say, it's nonviolent. It's interesting. I just think it's a genre that needs to exist, and I'm glad that people went on to do it. I'd like somebody to do a modern version of Nessie. I think that would be great.
Well, I play the flute to call the great serpent. This great serpent can turn the clouds around us into fish. Would you fill the sky for me? The giant catfish asks. I'm not sure. I can't play the flute, and I'm not sure how my mum does this. Try it for yourself, the catfish says, encouraging. You can always come and talk to me if you need some help. My name is Jet, an androgynous player avatar in a great t-shirt and hat combo, and I play the flute to call the great serpent. And then, I am the great serpent. I am floating above the giant catfish. I can twist, I can turn, I can control the pitch and the yaw of the serpent. I can still see my body below, on the back of the catfish. I twist and I turn until I fly through a cloud. Touching it allows me to catch it, and catching it transforms it into a shell. The catfish calls me home. I'm told there have been few clouds in the sky lately. No clouds means no rain. The catfish needs rain, so the catfish needs clouds. We can create clouds by collecting shells and throwing them into the fountain. We can create shells by taking pictures of fish, or by flying through coloured rings. Remember to take lots of photos. I want to cherish these moments together. The wide open sky is running out of catfish. And this is the wide open sky is running out of catfish. The first Steam Next Fest of 2026 ran between the 23rd of February and the 2nd of March. I didn't actively engage for the majority of the time it was on, as I was trying to play a big AAA release, because for once I wanted to play the big shiny thing that was releasing on a Nintendo platform at the same time as on the other bigger, shinier platforms. It's Resident Evil. I'm talking about Resident Evil Requiem. I reserve the right to contradict myself on a future show and say I think it's great, but that seems unlikely at this point. It looks good in a way that kind of defies description, but it defies my expectation in ways that don't. It's thrillingly grounded, and in being so induces the vulnerability that is so enticing and has been rightly held up as a great feature of the game, and at the same time jettisons the kind of logic that I want from a game that is based on such realism. I think I just want to be able to hide in cupboards, or use a saucepan as a melee weapon. I thought these were solved problems. I thought Alien Isolation put this to bed a decade ago. I get frustrated at the pacing and the absence of colour and the Leon Kennedy of it all, but I am a simple creature, so it is probably just the FOMO of Steam Next Fest that really torpedoes the experience. And so I come to Steam Next Fest, slightly anxious because surely it's too late. But it's not. I played a load of great demos that, by this point, you know all about. Dench Attack is brilliant, a hyperkinetic skateboarding score chaser where the fact that you are a train is kind of irrelevant to the gameplay, and that gameplay feels to me more like a mashup of a rhythm game and a platformer than a full-blown Tony Hawk-alike. I play Esoteric Ebb, the Disco Elysium-alike that captured a decent amount of the narrative depth of that game whilst feeling slightly less existentially horrifying. And I play a bit of Titanium Court, the match 3 puzzler with a surreal narrative that people are being oddly cagey about when I think that description is inviting enough. It's intriguing rather than immediate, in a good way. I mean, in that respect, it's hard to compete with a skateboarding train. And the next fest ends. I make a video about my favourite demos. I think about returning to Resident Evil, but then I notice how all these demos are still around. And so I play more. I play as many as I can, because I am free. And that's where the fun begins. I play a ton more demos after Next Fest ends, rendering that video I made irrelevant and forever unpublished, but released of the self-imposed time pressure that I stupidly allowed to suck all the fun out of this little time period. And the confetti cannon of colour, shapes and ideas fires big and loud and lingers for days and days. And it's after the Next Fest ends that I discover a ton of games that I see taking up the rest of my year. I play a ton of games that all could have individually been the focus of this episode. I play Sonky's Lagoon from debut solo act Kokodev, a low-poly 3D high-speed platformer where you play a manta ray shooting around surreal environments suspended in a hyper-colourful sky that looks like an explosion in a sweet factory and plays like a racing game, full of low-res PNGs of clamfish and seagulls and punctuated by pops of word art from your last PowerPoint party. I play Corks from developer True Colours and publisher Dear Villagers, a 3D action-adventure game that looks like Sable and plays a bit like The Pathless, frictionless movement and easy to initiate acrobatics. It's a game that, on the basis of the demo, if Hyperlight Breaker broke your heart, this one might put it back together. I also play Croak from another first-time development team, Woodrunner Games. And this is a frog game that I, scandalously, didn't cover in my list of frog games in episode 35. It's a precision splatformer that, like Luckshot Games' Big Hops, has you making use of your tongue as a means of traversal, but unlike Big Hops, which does fluid gameplay through graceful movement, Croak is all impact. Your tongue a means of having you slam into the environment as an amphibian ping-pong ball, possessed of such velocity that it's a wonder your little dude doesn't vaporise. You chain jumps, grapples, this ping-pong mechanic and various environmental assets to go from left to right, and it feels fantastic. I love it, and I wish it was out already. A feeling not helped by the wonderful animation work, which is wonderful because members of this team worked on Cuphead and Rick and Morty. At the other end of the spectrum, I play I'm Making a Monster, a visual novel based in reality, where the relationships feel real and lived in, with warmth and relatability, but with one key fantastic conceit, that magic is real. And that gives developer Zorky Studios license to invoke an intriguing element of horror. Human on the surface, but with something reprehensible just beneath the surface. The prologue hooks me so much that I play it 4 times just to exhaust all the dialogue options. I also play Box or Void from Duman Games, a cool little puzzle game where you move 2 sentient blocks of opposing colours to their respective exit points of any given maze. The catch being that, say, a white block can only move through the path created by a black one. I think it's easier to play than it is to explain, and play it I will when it releases later in the year. I play Volume, a Mirror's Edge-like that is like Mirror's Edge. I play Slime 64, a fun little 3D platformer that has you collecting abilities in its levels to enable further exploration of the hub world, and is from a developer, Wave Paradigm, who has made an absolutely staggering amount of games and music that warrant further attention but will have to wait for another day. I play Sleepy Man, a game that is already out, and a game that started life as a song, which has blossomed into a wonderful feeling, chaotic, absurdist 3D platformer inspired by, quote, games like Luigi's Mansion, Banjo-Kazooie, Majora's Mask, A Hat in Time, and Yooka-Laylee, end quote. It's a game that combines expressive 3D platforming, jumping, rolling, dashing, gliding and diving, with unguided exploration and discoverable objectives. It's a proud new entry in one of my favourite emergent genres, the silly sandbox, effortlessly blending the freeform exploration of a short hike with the player-friendly comedy physics of Tiny Terry's Turbo Trip and Henry Halfhead, and of course, the gleeful mischief of Untitled Goose Game. I play another game in Next Fest that pretty much matches this description exactly, a game that I assumed would be the hit of the fest, but I have not seen mentioned elsewhere, that I am going to do an episode on closer to when it releases later in the year. But I'm not going to say what it was, because it feels like a secret to keep. And right when I think I'm done, I'll play one more game. One more game that I am going to talk about. This is all to say that this Steam Next Fest, like the ones that came before and the ones that will come after, was an overwhelming carnival of creativity and critical mass of choice that no one outlet can cover comprehensively, nor any one individual can synthesise or summarise accurately. I am overwhelmed, but I am happy. I haven't missed out. I can rest. And I do. I awake in my room. I find a note from Mum, pinned to the wall. It gives some advice. I can choose to go back to bed. I do, and I sleep till noon. Games are meant to be an escape after all. When I finally awake proper, I climb down the ladder into my small, oblong house. It's a low maintenance, low poly space, but not ugly or wonky in the way that such visual styles so often deliberately are. It's bright and vibrant, and you can turn down the crunch and turn up the clarity in the options. I do so because I want to see this game in its clearest form. It's bright and airy, bright but soothing. I have unread messages waiting on the computer. I use Dolphin Chat to talk to my friend Kyan. We riff naturally on our lives, our shared boredom, the gentle hazing recognisable to any Gen Zers or anyone who has used an IM in a video game in the last 5 years. Kyan guides me to what to do next. Grab my camera and get shooting. I grab my camera and before I head out, I notice another note by the door. It's another one from Mum. Ring the bell, it says. I leave my house to discover the world outside. And it's huge. And it's tiny. I am on the back of a catfish, floating in a Celestian sky. There are a few trees, potted plants, coloured lanterns, a fountain. It's idyllic. I find my mum's journal. This is mostly hand-drawn work, illustrations of fish, annotated with things like shy or not shy. I find a frog statue. I find an egg. I find the bell, and I ring it. The catfish awakes. Hi, I'm Andrew. Welcome to Dialogue Tree. This is episode 38. My river is ending. ZIPIT Games, on the wide open sky, is running out of catfish.
I'm Joshua Pulsifer, and I am one half of ZIPIT Games.
I am Ben Warfield, the other half of ZIPIT Games.
ZIPIT Games are a two-person game development team based in New York City. They are, as you have heard, Benjamin Warfield and Joshua Pulsifer. They have made a game that they describe like this, quote, "A vast empty sky, an old digital camera, and a home in the clouds." Your mum has been gone for a while, and the once teeming environment has grown quiet without her careful maintenance. Equipped with a magic flute and the support of your computer friends, it's up to you to bring abundance back to an empty sky, all on the back of a giant flying catfish. How will you balance supporting life above while life below goes on without you? The Wide Open Sky is Running Out of Catfish is a story-driven photography game which explores themes of friendship, memory, and the impermanence of time and place, end quote. A description that is evocative, intriguing, whimsical and profound. All adjectives borne out by the game itself. I played the demo during NextFest, and I really enjoyed it. I've played the finished game, thank you to Benjamin and Joshua for the code, and I enjoyed it even more. It's a unique, distinctive and touching game, and as we've heard, a wonderfully surreal continuation of a genre that has its roots in the earliest years of games development. I asked Benjamin and Joshua if they had some time to talk about their game, and I'm lucky that they did. Let's hear from them now. Benjamin and Joshua from ZIPIT Games, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Doing good, yes.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no problem at all. No, it's a great pleasure to have you on the show today. To get started, this is a question that I've asked a few times recently, as I have found myself drawn to talking to people who are about to release games. So forgive me repeating it here, but how are things for you as you approach the release of your debut game? What are your sort of hopes, fears and concerns in sort of this last week before release?
God, releasing a game without bugs.
That would be really nice. I do feel like last week we were like, yeah, we're really confident, and then this week I'm like not sleeping well, and then, yeah, I feel like we have a pretty strong product, but yeah, it's a lot of like thorough testing, which is like really tedious and important, but like, yeah, I feel like we're feeling confident, but also beginning to lose sleep.
Yeah, it's kind of like the inevitable, like knowing that the release was always going to be really stressful no matter how much time and work goes into it beforehand. It's like just going through that whole process. There's no, I mean, it's a real hard lesson in learning that no thing that ever gets put out is 100% complete, and accepting that some things are, now it's a categorization of priority.
Yeah, we're triaging things. Not everything is going to make the cut, which is so fine.
Yeah.
So,
but generally, actually feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say about the game.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, it is coming out.
We did a lot of beta testing and play testing in the months previous to hopefully get those out of the way. I don't think anything major.
Yeah, we haven't experienced a major bug in several months.
Yeah.
which is very
well, and we're a
promising.
linear game, right? So it's like a bunch of dominoes, and like sequence breaking would just shatter the experience. So we've been very, very like rigorous in trying to make sure the sequence is right, and I think it's fine, but we'll see.
I feel like your games in your studio are unique in a number of ways that I think sort of justifies like delving into your history a bit. Can you recall your earliest experiences with video games? Or if not your earliest, then like a gaming experience that cemented video games as a part of your lives?
For me, the first memory I have of games was playing on my grandpa's Nintendo 64, playing Pokemon Snap, which is so bizarre for where I am now. And also Mario Kart on the 64, I think in Mario Party. Just the N64 was my first console. And then from there, I think the GameCube was probably the next like most influential part. Like lots of GameCube games in my childhood: Mario Kart and Luigi's Mansion, Smash, lots of Nintendo. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, my first game I ever played was RuneScape, a game that I still play today. So, still, enjoying my first gaming experience. But then I kind of fell out of games for most of like my teenage to adult years, and it wasn't until I met Ben that I started kind of like getting back into into gaming, into the medium, and I didn't really know I wanted to work on games until I played a few that really like opened my mind to the possibilities. I've always been a writer, and like I approach games from that perspective. I guess I have like an English background, and like working with Ben I think has really been magic in the sense that like you've been gaming for your entire life, and I'm kind of we're kind of approaching it from different angles at times.
My next question was actually about how did you get into developing games? So I guess first for you, Joshua, you said there were some particular games that you played that like inspired you to go into development. Could you talk a little bit more about what those were?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that like the game that really kind of did the thing for me was Omori when I played it. It was such a shocking and kind of revelatory experience for me, and has influenced so much of, I think, like what I find meaningful when making Catfish. I think that there's something really interesting that games can do with immersion and affect that is very different than any other medium. And I think that experiencing that really made me feel like it's so exciting to be in this place, in this creative place that is still kind of finding... It's weird to think that games are still quote-unquote kind of finding their voice in the year 2026, because obviously things have matured so much, but in comparison to like the world where I come from, where obviously literature has been, hundreds and hundreds of years, it's interesting to me to think about the ways that video games operate but still tell stories. So yeah, I come through video games kind of as, I don't want to say a spectator, but like as someone who kind of exists in both worlds, I guess. I do consider myself a game developer now, but in the early stages of making Catfish, I was very tentative of, or very, very, very hesitant to kind of use that title for myself. Now, of course, I feel very much so like one.
I guess that could be helpful to have like some kind of distance. It gives you a different perspective on the thing that you are making.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, well, I think we're making a very specific kind of game, like, because of that. Well, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely helpful because I don't really like reading in video game. I'm not like reading all the words all the time, unless it's like certain specific games that like I'm interested in. And so
that's not true. You have a lot of love
it
for
depends,
a lot of narrative games.
But a lot of the time, like I mean, like historically, I guess I would say is like I'm like blazing through, skipping through dialogue. I don't care. Get me to the gameplay. And so it's really nice because it's like I have that sort of tendency and mindset when I'm building the game. But Josh is like such a great writer that it comes in and like elevates the project so much because of like the writing. So
yeah, well, we like such different styles of games, so it's interesting like to make one. We feel like Catfish does a nice job of like balancing the two.
Yeah,
you know, like having like proper, you know, gameplay while also having like a narrative that's hopefully fleshed out in a way that's meaningful for people if they want that.
Yeah.
Ben, what's your sort of like usual? What games do you typically play?
Yes. So actually, before I was working on this game, I would play a lot more sort of artistic experiences. Something like Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood is one of my favorite games ever, and I played that like at the beginning of the production cycle. But now that I'm making a kind of like artsy kind of game, I'm looking for like potato chip games. I'm playing a lot of Mugenics right now. I played a lot of Hades 2, we're playing a lot of Deadlock right now as well.
We are playing a lot of Deadlock, yeah.
It's, you know, it's a MOBA. And I've played a lot of MOBAs and lots of like action sort of based games. I also really like immersive sims like Dishonored. I played a lot of, but I also try to branch out and I try to play a bunch of.
We play all kinds of games. Yeah, we're very into like quote unquote. We'll have boyfriend game hour while we're going Steam.
Yeah.
Try a random demo or just like try something we wouldn't usually buy on our own.
Yeah. I try to play a lot of games so that way it's like I'm like gaining inspiration and also just sort of like market knowledge of like what's happening here. But typically not really reaching for like curated art experiences right now.
That's understandable. Just to come back to the question about how you got into development, is that something that you always wanted to do, Ben? Is that something you always saw yourself as doing?
Oh my gosh, no. I've taken a crazy path. I have a math background. I have a math degree, and when I left college, I was like, let's go to school again. And I went to school for fashion, which is crazy. And so I came to New York to study fashion design and ended up really not liking it. And then I dropped out of fashion school and I was like, what am I doing? And then I met Josh and we played a lot of games. We played a lot of TTRPGs, lots of board games. I was still playing video games, and Josh was actually like, you have all these great ideas and like great design skills. Like you should make a video game. And I was like, I don't know. Maybe not. But then I was like, I guess, you know, I have like some coding skills, some computer skills, and you know, Unity's free, so like might as well try. And then our game got accepted into the NYU incubator when we applied, which gave us some grant money and some like mentorship and connections and networking, and it just became all so serious so all of a sudden but it's so fun. But now it's like, oh, thank God I found this because it is so rewarding and interesting and fun and multidisciplinary, and it's all the things that I liked about fashion without like the terrible like exploitation of the planet and people. It's so much better, you know.
Well, there's a lot of that in games too, but we have the fortune.
We're in control. Like we're in control. I'm not
Yeah.
wasting fabric, right? I'm not like throwing things away constantly. Like, you know, it's so fun now. Yeah, I feel like this is the path for me.
Well, that's great to hear. What an inspiring monologue. Thank you. I guess that covers like how your studio came to be. And I was looking at your website, and I love your description of your studio on it, where you say, ZIPIT is committed to understanding and experimenting with the ways that ludic storytelling operates and doubly operates on us as players. Could you elaborate on that a bit? So what influences are you drawing from, and what are your intentions, and how do you think those are manifested in your games?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the most, going back to kind of what I was saying before, like the most interesting aspect of storytelling in games is this notion that it's both, you know, you're performing the actions, but simultaneously the game is kind of performing on you. So it's this kind of thing where there's no boundary. And I'm really interested in affect and affect theory, and kind of thinking about the ways that immersion in gameplay allows for kind of these feelings to exist in you before they're even like called into consciousness, because a good game pulls you so deeply into it that you kind of, you know, identification becomes like a really serious and like almost like material thing in a way that sometimes happens in books, a little bit easier happens in movies, but games really kind of take it to this place that I find really just rich and so full of opportunity. And I think that a lot of Catfish was inspired by an interest in delving deeper into the ways that theory can kind of guide you know, game design, and thinking about the potential for you know, to like what kind of potential and is there to really tell a story through game, and kind of figuring that out in real time has been something that we did with this project. So, you know, not only are we really inspired by really wonderful, you know, a host of different games that do this very well, but also by a lot of just scholarly work and a lot of just people out there who are thinking very thoughtfully about what games even are. Yeah.
And then I think like we take these sorts of things and think about, like how does it like materially affect like the game. And I think one of the easiest choices for us was to make it like a first person game for this reason, where it's like when you are looking around with like a virtual eyes and a virtual head, it's like you are in this world. And we also try to like cram our environment full of details to make it feel lush and lived in, and like as much of a real place as possible to sort of like transport players to somewhere else to feel the feelings that you would feel in this place, and to you know, have the story a bit more emotionally impactful because it's like your home, like this is like you. So it's all about like sort of placing the player as much as possible.
One of my last questions before we move on to talking about the game is what are the positives of developing games with your partner? I'm not going to ask the flip side of that question because that would be me. But
I mean, I have a non-stop running active mind, always thinking, and it is such a boon to the entire process and my life to have someone that I can just talk to at any point and they're not like annoyed with me, and it's so wonderful. I think that is like one of my favorite parts, is just like this open line of dialogue, open line of communication. There's so much trust here where it's like any decision that we make, we bounce off of each other with like open criticism, any sort of like, you know, negative thing we talk about, and if we're like being too negative, we're like, whoa, you're actually like, okay, tone issue, then it's like, okay, we can like take that and mark it and like operate around it. I think just communication is my favorite part.
Yeah. I mean, when you have a partner as creatively adventurous and just ambitious and so absorbed as Benjamin is, the best part of working with your partner is to watch that person. Like working with Ben so many times, I'm not in awe of him simply because he's this wonderful human who happens to want to be with me. Like, I think anybody would be really floored and astounded to work with someone as dedicated and with such vision as he is. And working on this game with him is really like it's just so. I don't even know how to describe it other than like just falling deeper in love with a person just through how awesome
Wow.
they are, and being able to champion that. Like, I think that like so much of my I don't want to say like my job at ZIPIT, but like so much of what I do is to just try to take this really powerful force that he is and the ideas that he has and see how we can hone it and try to make it streamlined and make it materially happen. But yeah, I mean, I just every single day I'm in total shock of and just what he's capable of.
That is so sweet, so much more kind than my answer. And Josh is really good too, and Josh is awesome.
Well,
yeah. He. I'm telling you.
I don't want that to sound. I also need to warn. That's not to sound sappy either. Like, I'm not trying to sap it. I really do think that Benjamin has a vision that a lot of people would find they'd be very fortunate to be as close to it as I am.
Josh is really good at making things happen too. It's like there's so much work that has to be done here. Like I said earlier, it's like multidisciplinary. It's like it's not just like, oh, it's coding, it's modeling, it's business, it's taxes, it's marketing, it's promotion. It's like there's so many hats we have to wear, and Josh has learned so many skills to like pick up the mantle where things I could not do business like on top of everything. Like, there's just no way. So Josh being quick and ready to like take up the mantle on that is like the only reason this game is coming out.
That is the most heartwarming thing I think I've ever heard. That seems like the perfect time to wrap up this first part of the interview, and we'll take a short break now, I think. And when we come back, we will talk all about your game, The Wide Open Sky is Running Out of Catfish. The game that I'm talking about on this episode, it's a puzzle adventure game, and it's set on the back of a giant catfish. And the main sort of mechanic in the game has you creating fish that fly around in the sky around you, and your goal then is to catalogue these with your digital camera. And there is a reason, there's like a purpose for the photographs that you take. I think there is a clear through line here from your game that saw you trying to capture Nessie, this mythical, impossible creature, to the game that I'm talking about on this episode, which has you in this strange and surreal environment trying to capture these similarly impossible creatures. What do you think about that lineage that seems to be evident between these two games, between the world's first photography game and this new one, this latest one?
The game you're describing sounds more fanciful. They're taking they're taking the metaphor further yet. I guess flying fish and a catfish. Kind of ironic you're flying on the back of a catfish, because catfish are known to be bottom feeders. They're at the very bottom of the water.
It also talks, I should probably point out.
That sounds like a Dr. Seuss kind of fantasy cartoon. No, it sounds great. I mean, anything people want to do with a photography game, I think it's great, because I still think there's too many violent games out there. But especially for children, I think a game can be simple and fanciful and entertaining, and just as fun. It doesn't. It can be anything. So on a computer screen, you can let your fantasies run free. My fantasy was getting a clear picture of the Loch Ness Monster, Somebody else's fantasy is getting a catalog of these creatures. Maybe they're going extinct or something.
The island my mum and I call home is the Catfish. We talk. The Catfish explains that the sky is running out of clouds, and the clouds bring rain, and the catfish needs rain. They tell me how, the interplay between my camera, the flute, the serpent, and those shells. And I engage with this, gleefully. The game scratches the itch that playful photography games, like Toem or Pokemon Snap, do. Looking for the subject, looking at the world, is a reward. The game scratches the itch that little sandboxes with big goals do. I am being guided, but it feels like exploration. It's a structured experience with enough built-in flexibility that you won't pursue the exact same path as another player. The game is cute and whimsical. The game is melancholy. In the wide open sky is running out of catfish, you are left to heal a world short on resources by an absentee parent. You heal the world by filling the sky with fish. You do that by earning bells and throwing them into the fountain. Doing so spawns clouds in the sky around the catfish. And then, you play the flute to become the serpent and take flight. You soar around the sky around the catfish, flying through coloured clouds to collect them. Doing so triggers a real-time match 3 puzzle game that plays out within a small shell in the bottom right of the screen. Each time you collect a cloud, it materialises within the shell. Go collect another cloud of the same colour to have it added to your shell and hopefully merge with the previous one. Combine clouds to make new colours, combine those with a matching cloud to make more new colours. You use the D-pad to select one of these combined beauties, then hit the spawn button to convert them into a fish that materialises into life and swims off into your open-air aquarium. Once back on Earth, in the body of Jet, take photos of these new fish to generate more bells to throw into the fountain. It's a gratifying loop. These funny, polygonal fish and the kaleidoscopically filled out sky they create being the carrot and the stick. There are other things out there in the sky. Rings to fly through to generate more bells. Red nosy fish that eat your clouds. You want to get rid of them. Bubbles generated in great waves by the catfish themselves. These are a currency. When you find the vendor, and you will enjoy finding the vendor, you can spend these bubbles on various upgrades that improve your fish generating abilities. All the while, the narrative progresses. You have conversations via the Dolphin IM on your computer, initially with your friends Kyan and Margot. Kyan is an earnest young man, equal parts puppy dog enthusiasm and rain cloud bad luck, while Margot is their sassy friend, the one with a chaotic love life but a clear vision. You have a lot of back and forth in these conversations, aiding in the immersion, how much you are invested in these relationships. It's also a further source of interest. Jet and Kyan talk about it being the summer holidays, coming back to the surface to attend school, jobs, work and life. Normal stuff, contrasting intriguingly with the semi-psychedelic setting. The collision of the mundane and the surreal. How? And why? There are more conversation partners to discover. And there is a web browser as well. It needs close attention, but you should find URLs hidden around the world that you can use in this browser to effect further progress in the story. In this way, Catfish is slightly reminiscent of database games like The Root Trees Are Dead or TR49, but more accessible and, well, more fun. Your mum's blog is online. Maybe that'll tell us why she left. Mechanically, the final significant element to cover is the flute. You receive this early on and learn how to use it to transform into the serpent immediately. On Steam Deck, you can play 4 notes via the D-pad, up to 8 using R2 as the modifier. The game has a linear narrative, a sense of travelling towards a conclusive destination, but it doesn't rush or push you. You can mess around with the flute as much as you like. In the course of the game, you'll learn new songs that have different, equally cosmic effects. Progress is steady. Look closely, and you'll get closer. It may sometimes feel like the means by which you progress are illogical and convoluted, but solving an environmental puzzle that you didn't even realise was a puzzle is immensely rewarding. With a few exceptions, most of what I've spoken about so far is in the demo for the game, which is still available now. In the monologue that closes the demo, and what functions as the tutorial for the game, the catfish drops a bombshell. Everything you are doing is simply a way of delaying the inevitable. But the tone is not bleak, it's measured. The character and game encouraging you to savour the moment, to make the most of the time you have. in a similarly mature and measured manner, Jet does not appear to, at least yet, resent their mother for abandoning their post and abandoning them. Instead, I feel an unspoken longing for a comforting presence. I also feel Jet's impulse to do her, my mother's, work. I think the game lets you interpret this how you want. Are you taking up the mantle and doing right by her, or are you trying to prove yourself? The game presents as gently surreal and silly on the surface, but these themes, and the natural, warm dialogue, I find myself moved. I'm certainly moved to want to know more about all of this. We are back from the break, and I am here with Benjamin and Joshua from ZIPIT Games, and now we're going to talk all about their game, The Wide Open Sky is Running Out of Catfish. Now, guys, first, how would you describe your game?
Well, the short pitch is it's a story-driven photography game on the back of a giant flying catfish. And everything that comes after that, I think, is best described as imagine Pokemon Snap, but with a narrative, and instead of Pokemon, it's a bunch of flying fish.
yeah it's a surrealist sort of adventure game, but very much grounded in like real and true emotions. You chat with your friend on a computer, you follow a little bit of a mystery of your mom's disappearance, and as well as the catfish is dying, so you follow the story and you do some puzzling and you do some creature collecting and photography, and it's a bit of a romp, I'd say.
What seems to me to be the obvious follow-up question to that is, where did this idea come from? Where did the setting of the catfish and the other like biomes that you have, where did this come from?
So we play a lot of TTRPGs, and this actually started as one of the worlds that I ran for Josh and a few other of our friends, where I just really liked the fantasy of floating islands, but I was like, what if they were creatures? And then I was like, it's always a turtle. It's always a turtle in the sky. And I was just like, why is it always a turtle? Like, I like turtles, but surely we can think of something else here. And I don't quite know where catfish came from. I just sort of liked the idea of like the whiskers were like a real point for me and then in some form I was like, I liked whiskers because I was like, okay, we could put bells on the end of the whiskers, but that didn't end up staying. So I just liked the fantasy of flying around on fish, and catfish are just sort of like these humble, weird little creatures. And I thought that it would be really funny and a bold choice, and that's kind of why we ended up with this idea in the setting, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then fish flying around, I didn't know what the game was going to be. And this was like sort of an interesting part of our design process where I was like, yeah, there's a giant flying catfish. That's our genre, which isn't a genre and makes things a little bit difficult to like design for. But I was like, I can make it kind of pretty looking. What if there's photography? What are you taking photos of? And I'm like, well, I guess it's more fish. Because that's what I started with, was fish. So
it's so funny because, I mean, this is our first jump into any kind of game development. Like, Ben has never made a game before this. So what it literally is, like, the catfish you're walking on is one of the first things you've ever modeled. And the gameplay is some of the first game design you've ever done.
That's right. That's right. So outside of like TTRPG, like any first video game design.
Definitely. But it's just it's funny because everything has kind of been like a bit of a stumbling into, okay, we're gonna do that because that's just what we are gonna do now.
Yeah,
because we're gonna try it. You know?
I think just the bold choice led to like natural other weird and bold choices. So, yeah.
That really made me laugh what you said about the turtle. I was going to say, like, so are you familiar with Discworld? I was going to ask like about that. I have no idea how that series has travelled like around the world. I've got sort of no perspective on that.
Yeah, people,
but yeah,
that's popular in America for sure. I think.
Yeah. Yep, but yeah, it is always a turtle. So reclaiming it, good. Right. So. That sort of initial pitch for the game, it being this game set on the back of a giant catfish, it sounds like quite like kind of weird and esoteric. Like it sounds like like potentially inaccessible. But I think, as you've hinted at there, when you're talking about the fact that it's very story based, and you're like, when you're with talking to your friends, I think the game is very accommodating and it's very approachable, and it felt very immediate, like as soon as I picked it up. And so I'd like to get into a few of the ways that it does welcome players in. I think first, like, the look of the game is very inviting. It's this sort of low poly PS2 era style, but it's much more colourful and bright and vibrant, and I really like personally that you can turn the grain down to like really appreciate the prettiness of it. I really like that as a feature. What was behind the decision to adopt the art style of that era, but interpret it in this particular way?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, this is our first sort of project, first time ever 3D modeling outside of like clothing. So it was mostly just like a limitation set on me to make sure that I can like pump out assets at a regular speed, like where like fidelity doesn't need to be an issue because it's like aesthetic and like stylized. That was the main appeal of like this art style. But I also wanted it to feel, and this is something that we talk about a lot when we're designing the game, is like abundance is like a core sort of like pillar of our aesthetic and stylization. And I wanted that to come through in the environment with lots of colors, lots of shapes, lots of, detail and I think the low poly sort of modeling, it's just like great for making assets and great for like combining these things, like having like a palette of things to paint with. I don't know. I just felt like it was an easy sort of like design decision for our artistic limitation.
Something else that we find too, and that I find really interesting, and is this idea that, you know, you set a player in a first-person perspective in this world that they kind of associate with the past, with kind of a nostalgia, with a certain kind of rose-tinted lens, and being able to take this environment that feels like paradise and then subvert it, you know, and very quickly in the game you realize, oh, this paradise is not going to last. Like, this kind of feeling of safety and security that I have, like, that's heightened by the visuals and kind of the way that they make you feel. It makes the moments where things get more serious in the game, I think, much more powerful. So there's kind of an aesthetic quality to this cozy genre that we're very constantly trying to play around with, to, you know, tricking the players seems kind of like a rude way to put it, but to really kind of to mess with their expectations of what they're going to receive. Has been one of like the leading kind of design factors.
We want players to like care about the world and feel connected to it. And I do think there is something sort of intrinsic with this sort of low poly, low fidelity style that like allows people to like be comforted, right? There's nothing like super highly detailed and out of place. Everything feels like
everything's hand drawn.
Yeah, all these things are handmade, hand textured, individually, like artisanally done to hopefully evoke a sense of place and home and safety.
What you said there about getting players to care about the world, I think you definitely achieved that. I think the writing and the relationships between the characters and the conversations you have with Jet's friends, I've really enjoyed those, and they feel very natural. They feel like quite lived in relationships. Were they based on like real life relationships, like from like people that you know? Oh
yeah. I like have people, they don't know that I'm observing them. But I am. I'm very, very it was very important to me to imbue this kind of fantastical place with a real, like with a realism that kind of comes through in the narrative. Like, I want players to both feel like that they are in a place that they can escape, but also is not a place where they feel like the world isn't down below, real, like physically it is there still, and you are connected to it, and the kind of tension that I can create through a narrative that really kind of serves that feeling, because I am really like, this is another kind of thing about, I think, both of us, is like I'm much more in like I'm much more interested in, I think, kind of stories that are based in reality. Well, I think that you've always been drawn to more fantasy. Not to say I don't like fantasy either, but
yeah.
Catfish is a real kind of synthesis of our two kind of, I don't know, likes, desires. Right?
Yeah, I agree. I think also another key inspiration for us is the movie Ponyo, which is a Ghibli film, super fishy, super oceany, but also has this like great sense of place and realness to it as well, where like the characters are real people going through their real things, you know, like the world like isn't, it's like kind of ending, but it's not like really ending. It's like just more about these like sort of interpersonal relationships that they have with each other, which is I think something that we were trying to evoke with the writing as well, and like the story in general.
The game is like a real blend of genres. Like you say, it's a puzzle game with a strong narrative, but the core gameplay mechanic is photography. In terms of how this has been used in games previously, it's been like quite flexible. It's been used for exploration, puzzle solving, narrative development, and horror. In developing the photography mechanic in your game, what was important to you? Do you have any favourite photography games other than Pokemon Snap?
So photography is a really strange mechanic, because it's very hard to judge the quality of a photo taken in code, right? So there's a game that I've played called, and I think you played as well, Umurangi Generation, which tries to take photography and like quantize the qualitative a bit, where it's like, okay, it's like how many subjects or colors or things you have. But I found it quite difficult to design a real gameplay structure loop around like the quality of a photo. So we didn't. That's not what we're judging at all. And instead we want the photography to feel like a tool for expression of the player, rather than like, you know, we're judging you and like your art. Like that's so hard to do. So in our game, the photography is strictly about the subject of the photo, which is something that we can measure quantitatively, right? It's like how many fish are in your photo and what kind of fish are they? And that was sort of like the bedrock of like, that's all we can do with this photography mechanic. And that's all we're going to do, because otherwise things become so ephemeral and weird and hard to explain. Where if it's like, okay, just take a photo of that fish, players know exactly how to do that. And even if it's bad, right? Even if like their photo is super zoomed out and it's like behind a tree partly, like we're not trying to like discourage players from taking photos. There's no losing in taking a photo, right? We want it to feel effortless and easy and scalable as well for an entire game.
Yeah, I think that like with one of the motifs too of the game kind of being creation, both like in the large sense, like the creation of life, but also like the little art that we make in our lives. I think that it was really important for me to feel like that the players had moments where they felt like the photography was very emergent and like we gave them opportunities, places of interest to feel like they could allow for expression or just like things that they wouldn't be able to do if they felt like they were being watched by us. You know, like we want players to know that like Jet is not a self-proclaimed artist, and you don't have to feel like one either to make art and to find beauty in using this mechanic just for its own sake as a relaxing or even not relaxing if you're trying really hard to find a fish, but if you feel that gratification from getting it, you know, and taking a really nice shot, like that felt important to me.
Yeah, and then what we do as well is some fish have certain behaviors when photography comes up. Like the dolphin will come up and swim to you and get up in your face and block your view. Or like other fish are like really shy and don't want to be photographed, and so they'll swim away from you. So there's like little sprinklings of hopefully like emergent sort of challenges within there that make it not like necessarily challenging, but making it like a bit more interesting, a bit more like textured, and a bit more of a chase sometimes. Just like a varied sort of interesting gameplay experience.
Yeah. And I want to shout out Creature Kitchen, which was the last photography game that I played, which was very nice. Good game.
Yeah, I don't really play much other photography games.
We played a bit of Toem, didn't we? I played
Toem, and I'm vaguely interested in playing Viewfinder as well, which is a definitely more puzzle-based photography game.
I like how you cast dolphins as the jerks of the animal world. I've never seen that before. That's cool. Do you have a bad experience? Have you had a bad experience with dolphins?
No. They're not bad. They're just ego obsessive. Yeah. And that's not bad, and that's okay.
That's on me. I need to have a more nuanced view. There are shades of grey here.
That's right. They just love you. They just want attention.
So another key feature in the game is the flute. Now, instruments in games have a great lineage. So again, so listeners have an idea of where you're coming from. What are some of your favourite uses of instruments in video games?
The first one that comes to mind is Majora's Mask, or any sort of Zelda. Yeah. They use instruments all the time. I loved in Majora's Mask how the mask that you're wearing changes the instrument sound, and I would when I first played that game, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna just play this over and over again and find all of the songs. I'm gonna do it crazy style. That's a really great one. Do you want to shout out?
I guess we were talking about Animal Well recently.
Yeah.
And it's fun to mess around with the flute in similar ways. I feel like that. I this is one thing that I wish we probably went deeper into the gameplay with was the music aspect, because I love messing around with the flute. A lot of the songs in our game, as they play, you can play along with them because they're in the same key, and that's so much fun. But yeah, I feel like that because music in games does have such a strong, there's so much in the lineage and just so much to take from. We definitely like the music in our game. I wish we did a little bit more with it.
Yeah. I think that one other key inspiration here for us, especially talking about the song being in the same sort of scale as the notes you can play, and this is a crazy one, but Animal Crossing has little instruments in it that it's if there's a song playing, it also sounds good no matter what. And that was sort of an important thing for me with our flute and the music in our game, is that again, sort of with the camera, it's you can't really fail at making something sound kind of good, right? We want players to feel empowered and excited to play with these little toys that we give them.
Mm-hmm.
I've really enjoyed playing with the flute. That sounded weird. Like you say, it's really fun to mess around with. It feels like a quality of life feature, even though it's fundamental to the game as well. So yeah, it's great. The last question I'd like to ask on sort of the ways in which you are making the game sort of inviting for players is on the puzzle solving. It's kind of unguided, but it feels really intuitive. So, again, for the listeners, were there any particular influences in how you approached structuring progression in the game?
Yeah, so this is definitely the battle that we were fighting as we were designing this game, is how do we make an interesting exploration-based puzzle on top of everything else we're doing? And I think that... Well, okay, so for the first thing, another limitation that we set for ourselves, because this is our first project, is that Catfish is a very small area, right? There's not a lot of room to be lost. There's once you've explored it, you should be pretty familiar with it. And so then from there, it's all about recontextualizing things as the game progresses, right? Is that really a lamp? Is that really a little box? What are these things happening? What are these things doing? And hopefully as you explore and play the game, you get the sense that there's actually even more detail than I thought here. There's even more things happening here. And also, for me, a big inspiration for puzzle design and exploration design is something like an immersive sim, like Dishonored or Half-Life or something, where you can solve these puzzles in a way that feels intuitive, not just there's a key and there's a door, right? So a lot of our puzzles, the solution has a way that we intended, and then a way that our players sort of thought it ought to work that we just then implemented as well. Mm-hmm. There's hopefully lots of different ways of solving things and doing things. Some methods are easier than others, but we tried to allow multiple paths and routes to do what you want, for the most part, though that is more challenging said than done.
Yeah, I think that we used to, because again, just my own kind of shortcomings as someone who's new to game development and game writing is so much of the puzzle design in the beginning kind of was in the narrative, and players have a really hard time retaining information if you just write it. You can't write things in games and rely on players to understand exactly what you want them to do. You have to find a way for them to explore and find it out for themselves. So while a lot of the game puzzles are, it's necessary to be paying close attention to what's happening, what's being said to you. For example, like a prime one is like the starfish in the back of the house. Catfish tells you to go to the back of the house and take a picture of what's wriggling around. The player goes back there and they immediately are drawn to the statue. So what they do is they take the statue and they bring it to the catfish, and Catfish is like, well, did you see something next to the statue? And it's like, okay, we're teaching you, you have to listen to the words that are being said, but also still like allowing players to figure it out on their own, like not giving them, not telling them like explicitly what they're looking for, but making sure that they are still paying attention to like what's being said. Does this make sense?
Yeah, for sure. And I think also we, in that same sort of tutorial, we're trying to teach players where it's like, you are not alone here. Like Catfish and other NPCs will give you hints if you ask, like if you explore, and we try to like let that be a part of the exploration as well, as like this other sort of dialogue that you can go down and try to glean information in bits and pieces to figure out what's going on. Yeah.
So I'd like to now come on to talking about the story of the game. The basic setup is that you are this character, Jet, who lives on this island with their mum. The mother character, it's suggested sort of throughout, has up to this point been responsible for catching the clouds, caring for the catfish, and like keeping the world sort of moving. And at the start of the game, she has left. She's presumed to have gone to the surface below the catfish, but no one knows when she will be back. So I think we should probably talk about that. I think there's a lot going on there, and there's a couple of ways that you can read this. There's the abandonment of a parent, or there's looking at it in a slightly bigger way about a generational divide, and that's sort of what I was taking from it. Do you, as like people living in the world, do you perceive like a generational divide between like yourselves, like and your like generational cohort and the one that came before?
I think that while I don't necessarily feel a generational divide between myself and other people, I think that Jet, the protagonist, really feels very isolated from other people, not just their mom, but kind of the world below. Jet's one kind of constant in their life has been the catfish, who's a grandfatherly type figure. So in this way, I feel like that they, like have this kind of understanding of the world that is placed outside of time in a way. They're both very young, going through college, but they also have this whole life on the back of this ancient creature. And a mom who has kind of always been more or less absent, or maybe not totally the mom that Jet would expect to find down below if their life had been normal growing up. So I think that this experience is one that is I'm glad that maybe that feeling comes through, that there's something about being Jet that feels other, or feels like that there's a divide between them and the other characters.
Yeah, I do feel like we, as a part of the story and the feelings that we're trying to evoke, isolation is a big part of it. And it is interesting to think about like the generational sort of divide between Jet and mom and some of the other characters as well. And it is also not something that I really thought about for the game, but this is like an interesting sort of part and reflection on like how I don't know if I feel the same way, but I do feel like especially like with this game, I do feel like the cohort of games in our generation, and especially some of our peers here, we are just kind of making like weirder sort of things, and I do feel like there's like maybe a push from my generational cohort, or maybe not, I don't know, it's hard to say, but of like making like real human experiences. I think especially like with like AI and like the way like the bigger sort of game industry is, I think I really appreciate, and I'm not like a spokesman for the whole generation, but I would like to think that we would appreciate like real human stories, and maybe that's a divide, but maybe that's a bridge as well. Maybe that's what humans just want, is like these sorts of experiences.
I think just what really resonated with me about it was the relationship between Jet and their mother, and that distance between them, and the fact that Jet feels abandoned and feels alone, but he's not sort of like typically resentful of it. They are trying to reckon with it in quite a mature way, and it just made me think about how I feel like a certain distance from like my own parents. They're not particularly old, but they do feel like they are like a world away from me and like the experience of me and my friends. Like, do you feel something similar like with your parents? If that's not too personal a question, like, has that informed the game?
If you're listening, Mom, Dad, love you, but yeah, totally. I mean, I do feel like even something like explaining what I'm doing in my day is sometimes feeling we're talking in a different language, and like what I prioritize in my life and the things that I do, like I do feel very different from my parents, and I wonder if that somewhat subconsciously played into like these sorts of decisions that we made into the game. Where maybe it's like feelings of not being understood, or just like I think maybe also the story is like coming to reckon with those differences and to just accept like like your parents are people and they're different, and there's no expectation for you to be the same, but there are like weird and complicated feelings there, you know?
Yeah, I think that something that was hopefully apparent though to people who play, even this is stuff that's in the demo too, if you access Mom's blog, she is so loving of her child, and even with the immense differences that exist between them, especially as you get later in the game, you'll come to notice this, that knowledge of her love being why she might feel or do the things that she does is so important for me to get across. And on the subject of it, you know, like of feeling isolated from your parents, like you know, we were kind of talking about this earlier, you know, like it's kind of like we never bring up Jet's father is never ever even discussed once in the game, and I think that part of that has to do with like we're both children of divorced parents, which is like, you know, kind of like a joke thing to say, but it is very true to my own experiences as a child. Is like I had individual relationships with my parents. It was my mom and my dad did not touch each other in my mind. It was completely different lives and worlds. So I think that I have an easier time writing about family when it relates to just one unit of that family.
Yeah, same. This is sort of like, weekends at Mom's, you know, because, you know, Mom's house is different than Dad's house. That is an interesting part of it for me too.
Yeah.
I am also a child of divorced parents, so I'm happy to ride that cliche wave with you. As you, I think the one thing that's really like struck me, like now that I've like grown up, air quotes, and have kids, is noticing how my parents have, like, they now have, like, you know, their own families, their own like completely separate lives. Like they have their own families. It's like it's like the family unit that we had, like, no longer exists, like in any way. Like they have their own thing now. You bring up the father there. I had this. I had a question written down. Why was there a reason why you chose an absentee mother over an absentee father?
I just sort of, in my sort of little snarky answer would be that I just don't feel like the Catfish would be a male designed living space. I feel like I just don't think that someone would go into that much. And that's like, I was like a guy. Like, it's just sort of like, it felt like it was important to like invoke a caring sort of motherly like home and atmosphere. And so it kind of just like was always the case. Not really, I mean, just not even like a really heavy thought of like, ooh, is it mom or is it dad? It was like, yeah, it's mom, obviously.
Yeah, we'd have to dive deep into it. We have to do some psychoanalysis
Probably-
or something to find the
probably
real
worthy
answers
of that.
for that question.
Oh, I think you're right. I don't think any guy could design a living space quite as lovely as the back of the Catfish. It is so nice.
That's good. It does not parallel our own home. Our own home looks nothing like Catfish.
Well, our New York City apartment.
Yeah,
no.
maybe after we're done developing a game, we'll make our house look nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are games if not an escape from reality?
There you
That's
go.
right.
Right? Yeah.
So last sort of like heavy question about this. There's a thread in the story of the game that is kind of about attempting to evade death. Do you think that the impulse to avoid death is something that comes to everyone? Do you think that it's something that is inherent to like the generation prior to us? Do you think that like generations now are more accepting?
I feel like I don't know. I can't speak to everyone and if everyone is experiencing this, but it certainly has to be the most relatable topic, right? Like time and the scarcity of it is what connects all of us to each other. And what gives meaning to anything at all, right? Is that like the way you spend your time is important because you don't have an infinite amount of it. And it's that scarcity and it's that push and pull that like can create beautiful and tragic things. And I do think that was a really important first sort of major story choice we had for the game. That really, I think, drives home this sense of like nostalgic and sort of like beautiful melancholiness of our game that like I just think is very, very core to everything that we're doing and is definitely like the choice narratively that makes everything else make sense and like the reason for everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that one of the really important things about making art is to make sure that if you say something, that you really believe it, and that you're not just kind of throwing your voice out into the void because it's your job or because you feel like you should be. And I feel like that I have a real conviction to alert to people that death is scary, but it should not be considered the end. You know, I think that creation is something that we all partake in being alive. We're all kind of using the same force to make something much bigger than ourselves. And I think that Catfish is so comfortable with death and has such a vision of death that I don't share personally. I'm much more aligned with probably Jet, who has more ambivalent or kind of curiosity or trying to learn about what Catfish is talking about when he talks about the cycle and when he talks about creation as kind of as death and the need for something to no longer exist in order for it to be captured. You know, photography is little deaths all the time. That's all that it is. And it plays a really, you know, so the mechanic is really wrapped up in kind of this greater vision of what we want to say, which is, please use your time to make things because, or just to live your life beautifully, because that goes on, you know, that is the creation. And, I hope that people walk away from this game feeling more optimistic about what it means to be alive and why death, maybe if it can't be embraced, should be recontextualized.
I think the Catfish says at one point in the game, cherish the moment. And that's something that I really took away from the game and your writing in it. Thank you for that answer. That was really nice. We'll get off the heavy stuff now, and we'll bring us to a close with hopefully some fun questions. You've got the computer in the game, which I think was a really little fun thing to mess around with. And there are websites that you can discover to go to. Are there any hidden in the game that you that you don't need to access, like as part of the story, that are hidden there for players to find?
There's one that we forgot exists in the game.
There's a couple prototypes that like are still technically accessible, but like
amazing.
The string you need to type is so like no one's ever gonna find it. And there's also like what's really fun now is now that we're done with all like the core content and like my bugs list is totally done, which is so exciting for now. Is that we can go back in and add all these like fun little bits and bobs and Easter eggs and things. So not really anything interesting as of today, but maybe tomorrow. Maybe.
Oh, that's cool. That's very enticing. To bring this to a close, we'll look a bit to the future. How far ahead are you able to look at this point? Like, what are your hopes for ZIPIT games after the launch of Catfish?
This is our first and not last game, for sure. This is a flagship project, but not the ultimate project that we are working on. We love it dearly, but are so ready and already working on the next thing as well. And that's partly because of like the nature of this industry where it's like you cannot stop making games. Like you have to make another game because that's what you sell is video games. And, you know, even something like the publishing cycle is like a month or a year from now, it's GDC, it's publishing, it's all these sorts of things. It's like this constant churn. So there's that pressure. But also, it's so much fun, and we have so many other ideas, and we're very excited to make a game that is easier to explain, but still very much weird and of us. And we feel like we learned so much, and I'm really excited for the next game.
I think you've made a very unique, very touching game. I think it's very special, and I really can't wait to see what people think of it when it comes out. I think a lot of people are going to really like vibe with it.
Oh, thank you so
much.
hope
so.
Yeah, God, we hope.
Please vibe with
it. Guys, I have no more questions for you. So at this point, I'd just like to throw to you to promote the game, any links, socials, or anything you want the listener to know about where they can find you or the game online and how to engage with it.
Yeah, definitely. So, again, ZIPIT Games, we are making The Wide Open Sky is running out of Catfish. It comes out on March 27th on Steam. You can find us on social media at ZIPIT_games on pretty much every platform. We are quite active on Blue Sky as well. I've been having lots of fun on Blue Sky lately. Such a silly platform. But, yeah. Please, wishlist the game. Go buy the game. It might even be out by the time you're listening to it. Give us an email.
Email us. Whatever, email us.
Yeah.
Let's go old school.
Yeah, who cares?
Benjamin and Joshua from ZIPIT Games, thank you so much for joining me today, and good luck with Catfish.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
What did you do after Nessie?
I did write a couple more games. I did write a game completely in machine language for the Commodore 64 and VIC-20. It was called Cutoff. It was kind of a copy of an arcade game, a coin-op arcade game at the time, where you have a two-player game and each one is controlling this moving dot on the screen that leaves a trail behind it, and you have to maneuver yourself around the screen without running into your own trail or somebody else's. And whoever runs into a trail first loses. But I wrote a couple of other things like that. I wrote a game about, I wrote a violent game called Tank Duel, where you've got two tanks on the screen and you're trying to blow each other up. That was for the Atari. Actually, it started off being a spaceship game, but I couldn't get the spaceships moving fast enough. They were moving kind of slow, so I made them into tanks. So anyway, I did that for a while, and then late 1980s, I left Compute, went to a company that was started by the founder of Compute, and he was publishing a newsletter, a technology newsletter. But that didn't take off so well, so then we started publishing video game magazines, including, I think, the first Nintendo magazine. So somehow I ended up as the editor of a Nintendo game magazine, and did that for a few years. And then eventually that company went out of business, and then I got a job at Byte magazine. Because I had a background in machine language, they hired me to write about microprocessors, like covering Intel and so forth. And then when Byte folded in 1998, I was hired by an analyst firm that published a newsletter, a very technical newsletter just about microprocessors called Microprocessor Report. still in publication since 1988. So I did that, and basically that was the last half of my career. And I retired from that in 2020.
Did you ever find Nessie? Have you ever made it to Scotland?
I've never made it to Scotland. I've been to London a few times on business and pleasure. For a time in the early 2000s, I worked for a British company based near London in Elstree, which is sort of the British Hollywood, but never made it to Scotland yet. So never got a chance to get a real picture of the real Nessie. Maybe someday. I do a lot of travel.
Maybe someday can still capture that moment.
Yeah. If there are any programmers out there who want to do a modern version of Nessie, go ahead and do it. A company like Electronic Arts or Activision could probably knock out a simple child game for Nessie in a couple of weeks, you know?
And if they can pay you the royalties for it, I think they should.
Royalty free.
Oh, that's very kind of you.
Yeah.
Tom, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
My thanks to Ben and Joshua, and of course, to Tom Halfhill for their time. Ben and Joshua have made a unique and expressive game, meshing styles and mechanics into something particularly memorable that, even amongst the various wonders of Next Fest, stands out. And if, like the protagonist of the game and the gentleman you've heard from throughout, you look closer, you can see the direct line that Jet and their Catfish have all the way back to Nessie. 42 years of divergent life experiences and technological progress may separate Nessie and Jet's sky-high adventure, but the impulse behind their creation and the feelings they engender are the same. The wonder of discovery, the exploration of new modes of expression. For a game in part about memory, it seems fitting that we recognise Tom, Nessie, and the groundwork they laid back in 1984. You can play Nessie in a browser right now. The Wide Open Sky is running out of Catfish, releases on Steam on March 27th. I want to cherish these moments, says the Catfish. Give this game a chance, and you'll find something to cherish too. Thanks for listening. In the episode description, you can find a link to the show notes, which includes information on everything discussed on the show today. Most of the music you've heard was from the original soundtrack to The Wide Open Sky is Running Out of Catfish, composed by Charlie Kilgore, which will be available to buy and stream when the game launches on March 27th. The artwork for Dialogue Tree was designed by Pixel Benny, and you can find the show online at dialoguetree.cc. Talk to you next time.